The notification from my banking app stopped me dead in my tracks. Standing in the middle of my office, coffee growing cold in my hand, I stared at my phone in disbelief. $50,000. Gone. The family reunion fund I'd been building for the past 2 years had been completely drained. I'm Marin, and at 33, I've spent the better part of my adult life being the responsible one, the provider, the sister who always had her act together. While my younger sister Alana charmed her way through life, I built a successful business from scratch and became the family's safety net. Hey, everything okay? Morgan poked his head into my office, his usual grin fading when he saw my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. The money's gone, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. All of it. Morgan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He shifted uncomfortably, not meeting my eyes. Listen, Marin, there's something you need to know. That's when my world truly began to crumble. Alana's getting married this weekend, he said, the words tumbling out quickly. At the Mountain View Resort. They're calling it a family reunion, but... He trailed off, watching my reaction carefully. I sank into my chair, pieces clicking into place. That's impossible. She would have told me. Would she? Morgan raised an eyebrow. Look, I only know because my cousin works at the resort. She mentioned a Roberts wedding, and when I heard the details... He shook his head. I couldn't not tell you. My hands trembled as I pulled up my sister's Instagram. There it was. Subtle hints I'd missed. Wedding planning posts disguised as general lifestyle content. Comments from mutual friends about being so excited for this weekend. I dialed my mother's number, my heart pounding. Hi, sweetie, Reagan answered, her voice artificially bright. Is everything okay? Mum, is there something happening this weekend I should know about? A pause. Too long. Just the family reunion, dear. You said you couldn't make it, remember? Too busy with work. I never said that. I never even received an invitation. Right, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The reunion. At Mountain View Resort. Yes, that's right. Another pause. Listen, honey, I'm in the middle of something. Is Alana getting married? The silence on the other end was deafening. Who told you? She finally asked, her voice sharp. It was supposed to be a surprise. I laughed. A hollow sound. A surprise? Mum, it's my money paying for this surprise. The family reunion fund. That's what's funding this wedding, isn't it? Now, Marin, don't be dramatic. You're always so dramatic about money. I hung up. Morgan was still standing there, watching me with concern. What are you going to do? I pulled up my Aunt Maeve's number. If anyone would give me straight answers, it would be her. She answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, she said softly. Did you know? Yes. At least she was honest. I wanted to tell you, but Alana insisted it would cause problems. She said you'd try to take over everything, make it about you somehow. Make it about me? I stood up, pacing. It's my money they're using, Aunt Maeve. $50,000 I saved for our actual family reunion. Money I worked for while Alana was... I stopped myself, breathing hard. The wedding's in 3 days, Maeve said. What are you planning? I looked out my office window, watching the city buzz below. My whole life, I'd played by the rules. Been the good daughter, the supportive sister, the family bank. And this was my reward, being deliberately excluded from my own sister's wedding, paid for with my money. I'm going to that wedding, I said, my voice steady now, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who made it possible. Marin, Maeve's voice held a warning. No, Aunt Maeve, it's time they learned actions have consequences. I ended the call and turned to Morgan. I need your help. He grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. I thought you'd never ask. What's the plan? I grabbed my purse and car keys. First, we're going shopping. I need the perfect outfit for a wedding I wasn't invited to. As we left the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Alana. Mum said you know. Please don't ruin this for me. For once, can't you just let me have something? I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket without responding. Oh, sister dear, you have no idea what's coming. Mountain View Resort lived up to its name, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the majestic peaks beyond. I adjusted my emerald green dress, carefully chosen to complement but not match Alana's wedding colors, and strode through the lobby like I belonged there. Name? A perky coordinator held a tablet, scanning the guest list. Oh, I'm family, I smiled sweetly. The bride's sister. Her eyes widened slightly. I don't see you on the list. That must be a mistake. I'm Maren, the maid of honor. Actually, she glanced at her tablet, the maid of honor is listed as, is there a problem here? My mother's voice cut through the conversation. She froze when she saw me, her perfectly made-up face paling. Maren, what are you doing here? Supporting my sister on her big day, of course. I turned to face her fully. Isn't that what family does? Reagan grabbed my arm, pulling me aside. You need to leave. Now. You'll ruin everything. Like you ruined my trust? Or just my bank account? There you are. Alana's voice rang out across the lobby. She was already in her wedding dress, looking like a princess in white lace. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Maren, you came. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sis. I broke free from my mother's grip. Beautiful dress. I wonder how much of my money paid for it. Alana's face flushed. Can we talk privately? She led me to a small preparation room, closing the door behind us. The moment we were alone, her sweet facade crumbled. You're trying to ruin this for me, aren't you? She hissed. Just like you try to ruin everything. Ruin things? By what? Paying for them. You always do this. She paced the room, her dress swishing. You hold your money over our heads like some kind of weapon, making us feel small, dependent. I laughed incredulously. Are you seriously trying to make me the villain here? You stole from me, Alana. You and Mom conspired to exclude me from your wedding while using my money to pay for it. We borrowed it, she corrected. We were going to pay you back. When? How? I stepped closer. With what money? The money you don't have from the job you can't keep. The door opened, and Eric, my ex, and apparently now Alana's confidant, stepped in. Everything okay in here? I heard raised voices. Everything's fine, Alana said quickly. Maren was just leaving. Actually, I think I'll stay. I moved toward the door. I'd hate to miss the speeches. I have quite a few stories to share about the happy couple. Eric caught my arm as I passed. Don't do this, Maren. You'll regret it. I yanked my arm away. Like I regret dating you, or like I regret trusting my family. As I left the room, I overheard Alana whisper to Eric. She can't know about the other thing. Promise me you won't tell her about Dad's involvement. I paused mid-step. Dad? Our father had passed away 5 years ago. What involvement could he possibly have? Moving through the gathering crowd, I spotted Morgan by the bar. He'd cleaned up nicely in a charcoal suit, and the look he gave me said he had news. You won't believe what I just heard, he muttered, sliding me a glass of champagne. Your sister's fiancé, Caden. He thinks your parents are paying for everything. He has no idea about the money situation. I took a long sip, watching Caden across the room. He was handsome in a conventional way, greeting guests with genuine warmth. He looked like a good guy, maybe too good for my sister. Poor bastard, I murmured. He has no idea what he's marrying into. What's your play here? Morgan asked. Before I could answer, my Aunt Maeve appeared. Maren, honey, please think carefully about what you're doing. Some truths once spoken can't be taken back. They should have thought about that before they lied to me. I finished my champagne. Besides, I heard something interesting just now, something about Dad being involved somehow. Maeve's face went white. Where did you hear that? So it's true. I studied her reaction. What aren't you telling me, Aunt Maeve? She opened her mouth to respond, but the wedding coordinator's voice cut through the crowd. Everyone, please take your seats. The ceremony is about to begin. We'll talk later, Maeve promised, hurrying away. I watched her retreat, then turned to Morgan. Find out everything you can about Dad's connection to all this. I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface of this family's secrets, As guests filed into the ceremony space, I took a seat in the back row. Let them think I was backing down. The real show wouldn't start until the reception. During the ceremony, I watched my sister float down the aisle on our mother's arm, playing the role of the blushing bride to perfection. Each step was funded by my hard work, every flower and crystal decoration paid for with my stolen money. I gripped my program so tightly it crumpled. After the I-dos, I circulated through the cocktail hour, eavesdropping on conversations. Guests gushed about the family's generosity and how the Roberts really went all out for their youngest. If they only knew. Marin? A familiar voice made me turn. Caden stood there, champagne in hand. I didn't know you were coming. Alana said you were too busy with work. Did she? I smiled. Funny how stories get twisted. Congratulations, by the way. Beautiful ceremony. He beamed. Thanks. Your parents really outdid themselves. I tried to contribute, but they insisted on handling everything. How generous of them, I said, my voice dripping with sweetness. Tell me, Caden, has my sister mentioned anything about her financial situation? Or our families? His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Before I could respond, my mother materialized between us. Caden, dear, your parents are looking for you. She practically shoved him away before turning on me. Stop it, right now. Stop what, Mom? Having conversations, existing. You know exactly what you're doing. She grabbed my elbow, steering me toward an empty hallway. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? Happy? I yanked my arm free. You want me to be happy about theft? It wasn't theft. It was... She lowered her voice. It was what your father would have wanted. What does Dad have to do with this? Reagan's face closed off. Nothing. Forget I said anything. No, you don't get to do that. I blocked her path. First Alana and Eric, now you. What aren't you telling me about Dad? There you two are. Aunt Maeve's voice cut through the tension. Reagan, the photographer wants family photos. My mother practically fled. Maeve watched her go, then turned to me with worried eyes. You need to be careful, Marin. You're pulling at threads that could unravel everything. Good, I snapped. Let it unravel. I'm tired of being the only one holding everything together. Morgan appeared, slightly out of breath. You need to hear this, he said, pulling me aside. I've been talking to some of the older guests. Apparently your dad had a secret insurance policy, one that only paid out if certain conditions were met. What conditions? I'm still working on that part, but get this, the policy was worth exactly $50,000. My head spun. The exact amount that was in your family reunion fund? Yeah. Morgan glanced around. And guess who was the beneficiary? Alana, I whispered. Bingo. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed made no sense. Why would Dad have a secret policy for Alana? Why did it match my stolen money exactly? I spotted Eric watching us from across the room. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away and headed for the terrace. I followed. Spill it, I demanded, cornering him outside. What do you know about Dad's insurance policy? He lit a cigarette, hands shaking slightly. I shouldn't be talking to you about this. You owe me, Eric, after everything. He took a long drag. Your dad. He made some mistakes, Marin. Bad investments, loans from the wrong people. The insurance was supposed to fix things, but what? The policy wouldn't pay out unless Alana was married before she turned 30. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She turns 30 next month. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. So this whole wedding was rushed to meet the deadline. Yeah. He finally looked at me. But your sister really does love Caden. That part's real. I leaned against the railing, processing. And my money? The fund? They needed it for the wedding expenses. The policy hasn't paid out yet. He crushed his cigarette. Look, I know it's messed up, but they were desperate. Your dad's debts. There are people waiting for that money. Before I could respond, Caden appeared in the doorway. There you are, he said, looking between us with confusion. Marin, could we talk for a minute? I straightened up, smoothing my dress. Of course. As I followed Caden inside, my mind raced. This wasn't just about a stolen fund anymore. This was about Dad's secrets, Mum's lies, and Alana's desperate race against time. The question was, what would hurt more, keeping these secrets or exposing them? The reception was about to begin, and I had a decision to make. Caden led me to a quiet corner of the reception hall, his face etched with concern. I just had an interesting conversation with one of the vendors, he said. They mentioned something about payment issues and a family reunion fund. Before I could respond, Morgan appeared at my side, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, he said smoothly, but Marin, you need to see this. On the screen was a scan of an old insurance document. Dad's signature was clearly visible at the bottom, along with a handwritten note. For my little princess, when she needs it most. Where did you get this? I asked. Your Aunt Maeve, Morgan replied. She's been keeping it safe, waiting for the right moment. Caden peered at the screen. What's that? The truth, I said, just as the DJ announced it was time for speeches. And speaking of truth, I believe it's my turn to say a few words about the happy couple. Marin, Caden grabbed my arm. What's going on? Ask your new wife, I said, pulling away and heading for the microphone. My mother's face drained of color as I took the stage. Alana, seated at the head table, gripped her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. For those who don't know me, I began, my voice steady. I'm Marin, the bride's sister, the uninvited sister, actually. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but that's okay because I'm still here, just like my money is here, funding this entire celebration. Marin, don't. Alana stood up, but I continued. You see, this beautiful wedding was paid for with $50,000 from my family reunion fund. Money I saved, money that was taken without my knowledge or permission. I held up Morgan's tablet. But here's the interesting part. That amount exactly matches a secret insurance policy our father left for Alana. A policy that only pays out if she marries before her 30th birthday, which is coincidentally next month. The room erupted in whispers. Caden's face showed dawning comprehension and horror. So I have to ask, sis, I turned to Alana, is this really about love? Or is it about Daddy's money and his mysterious debts? That's enough. Reagan rushed toward the stage, but Morgan blocked her path. No, Mom, it's not enough. I projected my voice over the chaos. Tell them about Dad's debts. Tell them about the people waiting for this insurance payout. Tell them why you really needed my money to make this wedding happen right now. Alana burst into tears, mascara streaming down her face. You don't understand. They were going to take everything. Who was going to take everything? Caden demanded, standing up. Alana, what is she talking about? The loan sharks, Eric spoke up from his table. Your father-in-law borrowed money from some dangerous people. This insurance payout is supposed to clear those debts. The room fell silent. Caden stared at his new wife in disbelief. You married me to pay off your father's gambling debts. No, Alana cried. I love you. The timing was just convenient. I watched it all unravel, feeling strangely hollow. This wasn't the satisfaction I'd expected. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone, I apologize for disrupting this celebration of love and deceit. Please enjoy the cake. I paid for that too. As I stepped down, Aunt Maeve caught my arm. There's more, she whispered. The insurance policy. It's not just about the money. There's a letter your father left with it. Something he wanted Alana to know only after she was married. What does it say? Before she could answer, Alana's scream cut through the room. You've ruined everything, just like you always do. She lunged at me, but Caden caught her around the waist. The only thing ruined here is the truth you tried to bury, I said calmly. Now, about that letter, Aunt Maeve. Not here, she glanced around nervously. Meet me in my room in 10 minutes. Room 412. As she hurried away, Morgan appeared at my side. Well, that was quite a show. It's not over yet, I said, watching Caden storm out of the reception hall. Alana running after him in her white dress. Dad left one more secret for us to uncover. My mother stood alone at the head table, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, our eyes met across the room. In that look, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. What had Dad written in that letter? And more importantly, was I ready to learn the truth about the man we'd all thought we knew? "Come on," I said to Morgan. "We have an appointment with the past." The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt endless. Morgan kept checking his phone, showing me the chaos unfolding on social media as wedding guests shared their versions of what had happened. "Your sister's trending locally," he said with a low whistle. "Not in a good way." Room 412's door opened before we could knock. Aunt Maeve pulled us inside, checking the hallway before closing it. "Reagan's on her way up," she said, hands shaking as she retrieved an envelope from her purse. "We don't have much time." "Just give me the letter," I said, reaching for it. She pulled back. "Merrin, you need to understand something first. Your father—" The door burst open. My mother stood there, mascara streaked down her face, looking more desperate than I'd ever seen her. "Don't you dare," she said to Maeve. "We swore we'd never tell them." "Tell us what?" I demanded. "What's in that letter?" "The truth about your father," Maeve said softly. "About who he really was." "He was a gambling addict," I said. "We already know that." "No," Reagan's voice cracked. "He was a thief. He stole from his company, from his partners. The gambling debts were just a cover story." Morgan stepped between us as I moved toward my mother. "What are you talking about?" "The insurance policy wasn't really insurance," Maeve explained, finally opening the envelope. "It was money he'd hidden away. Stolen money. He knew they'd come looking for it eventually." My hands trembled as I took the letter. Dad's familiar handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Alana, if you're reading this, you've fulfilled the condition I set, marriage before 30. I'm sorry for the burden I've placed on you, but I needed to ensure this money would be protected until the statute of limitations expired. The 50,000 is clean now, legally yours. Use it to start fresh, to escape the mess I've made. I chose you for this because you're like me. You understand that sometimes the end justifies the means. Maren is too much like your mother, too rigid in her morality. Protect her from this truth, she wouldn't understand. All my love. Dad." The paper slipped from my fingers. "He thought I was too moral." I laughed, a harsh sound. "While Alana was just immoral enough." "He was trying to protect you," Reagan insisted, "by making me the family ATM, by letting Alana steal from me." "That wasn't part of the plan," Maeve interjected. "The stolen money was supposed to stay hidden until after the wedding. But when the venue demanded full payment up front, they got desperate," Morgan finished. "So they used your money as a bridge loan." A commotion in the hallway drew our attention. Alana burst in, her wedding dress askew, face streaked with tears. "Caden's gone," she sobbed. "He left. He's demanding an annulment." "Good for him," I said coldly. "This is all your fault," she screamed, lunging at me. Morgan caught her mid-stride. "You couldn't let me have this one thing." "One thing?" I stepped closer, Morgan still restraining her. "You've had everything. Dad's favor, Mom's protection, my money." "I had Dad's burden," she shot back. "His secrets, his shame. Do you know what it's like carrying that around?" "Girls, please," Reagan tried to intervene. "No, Mom," I turned on her. "You don't get to play peacemaker now. You knew about Dad's crimes. You knew about the stolen money. You let me work myself to the bone supporting this family while protecting his precious legacy. I was protecting both of you by letting her steal from me." "We were going to pay you back," Alana said, suddenly quiet. "With the insurance money, Dad's money. It was always meant for family anyway. That's your justification. That stealing from me was okay because we're family." A sharp knock at the door silenced us all. Eric stood there looking grim. "The police are downstairs," he said. "Someone at the reception called them about the fraud allegations. They want to talk to everyone." Reagan sank onto the bed, head in her hands. Alana started crying again. Maeve clutched Dad's letter, looking between us all helplessly. Well, I said, smoothing my dress, I guess it's time for the whole truth to come out. All of it. Maren, please, Reagan reached for me. Think about what this will do to our family. I looked at my mother, then at my sister, then at the letter that had shattered our family's carefully constructed lies. Our family? I said quietly. Our family was built on lies, Mom. Maybe it's time to build something new. Something honest. The sound of footsteps in the hallway grew closer. We all stood frozen, waiting for the knock that would change everything. The police interview room felt colder than the rest of the hotel. Detective Torres sat across from me, reviewing my statement about the missing funds. Let me get this straight, she said, tapping her pen against her notepad. Your father set up a fake insurance policy as a way to launder stolen money, and your sister and mother used your personal funds to finance a wedding that would trigger the payout. That's correct. And you have documentation of all this. Morgan, who'd insisted on staying with me as a witness, pulled out his tablet. Everything's here. Bank statements, the original insurance document, and Mr. Roberts's letter explaining the scheme. The detective reviewed the evidence, her expression growing grimmer. This goes beyond simple family fraud. We're looking at potential money laundering, corporate theft, and conspiracy. Through the interview room's window, I could see Alana in the next room, still in her wedding dress, sobbing as she gave her statement. Mom sat in the lobby, looking shell-shocked as officers took statements from wedding guests. What happens now? I asked. That depends, Detective Torres leaned forward. Are you pressing charges? The question hung in the air. Before I could answer, Caden appeared at the door with another officer. Sorry to interrupt, he said, looking exhausted. But I think you need to hear this. He sat down next to me. Alana just told me everything, not just about the wedding and the money, but about what happened 3 years ago with your father's company. Detective Torres raised an eyebrow. Go on. The company didn't just go bankrupt, Caden explained. Your father orchestrated a massive embezzlement scheme, multiple shell companies, fake invoices, the works. The 50,000 was just a small part of it. How do you know all this? I asked. Because I'm a forensic accountant, he replied. That's how Alana and I met. I was actually investigating companies connected to your father's case. He paused. She got close to me deliberately, hoping to throw me off the trail. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. So your whole relationship was a lie? Not entirely, he said softly, but enough of it was. Detective Torres was scribbling rapidly. Mr. Rivera, we'll need your official statement. A commotion outside drew our attention. Aunt Maeve was arguing with an officer, waving what looked like another envelope. Let her in, I said quickly. Maeve rushed in, out of breath. There's more, she said, handing me the envelope. Your father left this with his lawyer, to be delivered if certain events occurred. It arrived at my house yesterday. Inside was a USB drive and another letter. This one was different. It was a confession, detailed and damning, naming names and listing accounts. He knew he was dying, Maeve explained. The cancer diagnosis came right after the investigation started. This was his insurance policy, not the money, but the truth. He wanted to protect his partners in crime, unless they turned on his family. Detective Torres took the USB drive. This could break open several cold cases. My phone buzzed, a text from Morgan, who'd stepped out earlier. Turn on the news, now. Someone found a remote and switched on the room's small TV. The local news was showing live footage of police raids at multiple locations. The headline scrolled, Major financial fraud ring exposed, multiple arrests in progress. Those are Dad's old business partners, I whispered, recognizing some of the names. They've been watching them for years, Caden explained, just waiting for evidence like this. Another officer appeared at the door. Detective, we need you. Mrs. Roberts is asking to make a full confession. I stood up. I want to hear this. In the lobby, my mother sat straight-backed, composed despite her smeared makeup. When she saw me, something in her broke. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. I thought I was protecting our family's reputation. Your father, he convinced me it was for the best, that the truth would destroy us all. The lies destroyed us, Mom. The truth might save us. Alana appeared, escorted by officers, her once perfect wedding dress now wrinkled and tear-stained. They're saying I could face charges, she said, looking terrified. Maren, please. I turned to Detective Torres. If I don't press charges for the stolen funds, what happens? They'll still face consequences for their roles in the larger scheme, she said, but their cooperation could help their cases. I looked at my family. My mother's desperate face, my sister's ruined wedding dress, my aunt's tired eyes. Then I looked at Morgan, who'd stood by me through everything, and Caden, who'd chosen truth over love. I won't press charges, I said finally. But I want the whole truth to come out, all of it. Detective Torres nodded. We'll need you all downtown for formal statements. As officers began organizing transport, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the lobby's mirrors. I looked different somehow, stronger, clearer, free of the weight of family secrets. The truth had shattered us, but maybe, just maybe, it could also set us free. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police statements, news reports, and endless cups of precinct coffee. I sat in the waiting area while my mother and sister were processed, Morgan steadfast beside me. Ms. Roberts? A legal aide approached with a stack of papers. We've frozen the accounts connected to the insurance policy, but we've managed to recover your personal funds. You'll just need to sign here. As I signed, the TV overhead blared another update. Breaking news. Corporate fraud investigation expands. 3 more executives arrested. Turn that off, Aunt Maeve called from across the room. She looked exhausted, having spent hours helping investigators piece together Dad's paper trail. The doors opened, and Alana emerged, escorted by her lawyer. Her designer wedding dress had been replaced by borrowed clothes that hung loose on her frame. Our eyes met, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister without her masks. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Morgan squeezed my hand and stepped away, giving us space. I don't even know where to start, Alana said, sinking into a chair beside me. I've been lying for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to tell the truth. Try starting with why, I said. Why did you let Dad pull you into this? She twisted her hands in her lap. He made me feel special, like I was the only one who could help him. You were always so perfect, successful, independent. I was just the pretty one, the charming one. But Dad made me feel smart, trusted, important. By making you his accomplice? By making me his confidant. Her voice cracked. When he got sick, he said I was the only one who could protect the family. That you were too honest, too ethical to do what needed to be done. And look how well that turned out. I know, she wiped her eyes. The worst part is, I really did love Caden. Still do. But I ruined it, just like I ruin everything. Before I could respond, our mother appeared, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her lawyer was explaining something about cooperation agreements and reduced charges, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at the TV screen, where Dad's old photo was being shown next to the word mastermind. Mom, I called out. She turned, tears streaming down her face. I should have told you both the truth years ago, when I first discovered what your father was doing. Maybe then what? I stood up. Maybe then we could have been accomplices sooner. Maybe then we could have helped him steal more. Maren, Aunt Maeve warned. No, she needs to hear this. I faced my mother. You didn't protect us by lying. You taught us that love means covering up crimes. That family loyalty means betraying our own values. I know what you meant, I cut her off. But intent doesn't change impact. Eric appeared, looking uncomfortable in his rumpled suit. They want to talk to me again about the offshore accounts. But first, he pulled out his phone. Caden asked me to give you this message, Alana. She grabbed the phone, reading quickly, her face crumpled. The annulment papers are ready, she whispered. He's not pressing charges, but he never wants to see me again. Morgan returned with fresh coffee. The press is outside. They're calling it the Wedding Gate scandal. Local news is having a field day. Let them, I said. No more hiding, no more secrets. Detective Torres approached our group. We're ready for the final statements. After that, you're free to go. Mrs. Roberts, Ms. Roberts, she nodded to my mother and sister. Your lawyers will be in touch about the cooperation agreements. As they were led away, Aunt Maeve touched my arm. Your father left one more thing with me, a letter for you, written the day before he died. I didn't give it to you earlier because, well, I wasn't sure if you'd want it. She held out an envelope, worn at the edges like she'd carried it for a long time. My name was written in Dad's familiar scrawl. Do you want to read it? Morgan asked gently. I stared at the envelope, feeling the weight of all the lies it might contain. Then I walked to the nearest trash can and dropped it in. No, I said. I'm done letting his words control this family. Aunt Maeve smiled sadly. You really are nothing like him. Thank God for that. I turned to Morgan. Let's get out of here. I need air. As we walked toward the exit, past the gathering reporters and flashing cameras, I heard Alana call out, Marin, wait! She ran up, looking desperate. What happens now? To us? To the family? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not the glamorous bride or the skilled manipulator, but a scared woman finally facing reality. Now, I said, now we learn how to be honest. With ourselves and each other. It won't be easy, but it's the only way forward. The precinct doors opened, and the camera flashes hit us like lightning. It was time to face the world and the truth together. The autumn wind whipped around us as Morgan helped me carry the last box from my mother's house. The for sale sign in the front yard swayed, its sold sticker bright against the fading light. That's the last of it, I said, closing the moving truck's door. Everything else goes to auction next week. My phone buzzed, a text from Alana. Just finished my community service shift. Can we talk? Go, Morgan said, noting my hesitation. I'll handle the truck. This is important. I found Alana at the small coffee shop where she now worked part-time. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. The court-mandated ankle monitor peeked out below her hem. Thanks for coming, she said, sliding me a cup. I wanted you to know first, I got accepted into the accounting program, starting next semester. Really? That's unexpected. She smiled weakly. Turns out I'm good with numbers. Just need to use that power for good instead of evil this time. How's Mom handling the house sale? Better than expected. The money will help pay the restitution. She paused. Have you visited her yet? I shook my head. Mum's 6-month sentence had started last week. Not ready. She asks about you, says she's finally seeing a therapist in there, dealing with everything Dad put us through. The bell above the door chimed, and Aunt Maeve walked in, carrying a familiar-looking box. Found this while helping with the house, she said, setting it down. Thought you both should see it. Inside were photos, hundreds of them. Our family through the years, before the lies, before Dad's schemes. Birthday parties, school plays, family vacations. Look at this one. Alana picked up a photo of us as kids, covered in mud from a rainstorm. Remember how mad Mom got about the carpet? Remember how Dad convinced her it was good luck to have muddy children? I found myself smiling despite everything. He wasn't always bad, Maeve said softly. The man in these photos, that was real too. The good doesn't erase the bad, I said, but my voice had lost its edge. No, Alana agreed, but maybe understanding both helps us heal. My phone buzzed again. Detective Torres. Final paperwork ready. Your testimony helped secure 3 more convictions. Thank you. The detective says they've recovered most of Dad's hidden assets. I told them. They're setting up a victim restitution fund. I heard, Alana nodded. Caden's firm is handling the disbursement. She swallowed hard. He still won't talk to me, but at least he's helping make things right. The coffee shop door opened again, and Morgan entered with Eric. They'd been working together, helping investigators track down the last of Dad's accomplices. Just got word, Eric announced. They found the last offshore account. It's over. Is it? I looked at the photos spread across the table. Sometimes I feel like we'll be dealing with Dad's legacy forever. Not his legacy, Maeve corrected. Your legacy, all of yours. Look what you've done. Helped expose corruption, made amends, started healing. That's the new family legacy. Alana reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. I know I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but I'm trying to earn it, to be someone you can trust again. I squeezed her hand, surprising myself. Trust takes time, but trying counts for something. Morgan sat beside me, examining a photo. You know, despite everything, you two still look alike when you smile. God help me, I laughed, and after a moment Alana joined in. It felt rusty, unfamiliar, but real. The auction company needs the photos catalogued, Maeve said. Which ones do you want to keep? I looked at the scattered memories, the truth and lies, joy and pain, all mixed together like the mud on our childhood clothes. Let's sort through them together, I said. Keep the real moments, let go of the staged ones. Like a family? Alana asked quietly. Like people learning to be a family, I corrected. Honestly this time. Outside, the autumn wind continued to blow, scattering leaves across the sidewalk. Inside, surrounded by coffee and memories, we began the slow work of rebuilding. Not what was lost, but something new, something true. Hey, Morgan nudged me, pointing to a photo of me and Alana at her high school graduation. You're both laughing in this one, real or staged. I studied our younger faces, remembering that day. Real, I said finally. Some things even Dad couldn't fake. Alana smiled, and for the first time since the wedding, I saw my sister instead of our father's daughter. We had a long way to go, but at least now we were walking in the light.
I'm Emma, a 34-year-old photographer, recently turned full-time mom. My world, once framed through the lens of my camera, now revolved around the tiny bundle of joy sleeping in the next room. But beneath the surface of this newfound motherhood, something was amiss. The house, our once beloved sanctuary, felt like a hollow echo of its former self. The grandeur of the terrace, where Alex and I used to share dreams over morning coffees, now seemed to mock me with its emptiness. The garden, meticulously cared for, stood silent, a witness to the growing void between us. I still remember the day I came home from the hospital, our baby boy cradled in my arms. I expected warmth, tears of joy, something, anything. Instead, Alex greeted us with a glance that barely hid his indifference. Honey, aren't you excited? Say hello to your son, I nudged, trying to mask the tremble in my voice. Alex barely glanced at our baby, his eyes void of the spark I used to know. Yeah, he's great. I'm just not good with babies, you know? Give me time. It wasn't just the baby. The Alex I knew, the one I fell in love with, seemed to have vanished. Each day he'd return from work, his face a mask of fatigue, his words sparse and hollow. One evening, as I rocked our son to sleep, the silence became unbearable. Alex, we need to talk. This distance between us, it's not just about the baby, is it? He sighed, his attention fixed on some distant point beyond the walls of our once happy home. Emma, don't start. I'm tired, work's a mess. I don't need another lecture. I felt a pang of anger, mixed with a dose of fear. Lecture? Alex, look at us, at our family. You're a father now, and I feel like I'm doing this all alone. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold, distant. What do you want from me, Emma? A parade? I'm here, I'm working, I'm providing. What more do you want? The words stung, each one a reminder of the chasm that had formed between us. I want you, Alex. The man I married. The man who promised to be by my side, not a shadow that haunts this house. He stood up, his frustration evident. I can't deal with this right now. I'm not the enemy, Emma. Maybe you're the one who changed. Life after bringing our son home wasn't the blissful picture I had painted in my mind. It was more like a puzzle, with pieces that didn't quite fit. Alex, the man I vowed to spend my life with, was the piece that had shifted the most. His late nights at work were becoming a pattern, a repeat of a past I thought we had buried deep. One chilly evening, as I cradled our son, trying to soothe his fussiness, the sound of the front door creaking open broke the monotony. Alex walked in, his face drawn, his eyes avoiding mine. Back late again, huh? I said, my voice laced with a tiredness that went beyond physical. Alex just grunted, tossing his keys on the table. Work's a mess. You wouldn't understand. The sharpness in his tone stung. Wouldn't understand? Alex, I've been there. Remember the late nights in the studio, the deadlines? I get it. But this is different. You're different. He scoffed, loosening his tie with a jerk. Different how? Because I'm trying to provide for this family? Because I'm not jumping with joy every minute? I bit back the retort that sprung to my lips, choosing my words carefully. It's not about providing, Alex. It's about being present. You barely look at your son, you barely talk to me. It's like you're here, but you're not. He looked at me then, his eyes hard. What do you want from me, Emma? I'm working my ass off every day, coming home to this. He gestured vaguely around the room. And all I get is complaints. The hurt was raw, real. Complaints? Is that what you think this is? Alex, I'm worried. About us, about you. I see how you avoid us, how you're pulling away. It reminds me of before. The air turned icy. Alex's face tightened, his jaw clenching. Before? You're bringing that up again? I thought we were past that, Emma. I thought we agreed to leave that behind. I held our son closer, his small warmth a stark contrast to the chill between us. Leave it behind? How can I, Alex, when you're acting just like you did back then? Late nights, the distance, the silence. It's all too familiar. He threw up his hands, frustration radiating off him. So, what, you think I'm cheating again? Is that it? You think I haven't changed? The question hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. I don't know, Alex. I don't know what to think. All I know is that something's not right. And it's tearing us apart. He ran a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of his stress. Tearing us apart? Maybe it's your constant accusations, ever thought of that? Maybe it's you who's not letting us move forward. And just like that, he left the room, leaving behind a silence that was louder than any argument. It was just another mundane afternoon when my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from someone I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued, I opened it, not knowing that those few lines were about to shatter the fragile piece of my world. Emma, you don't know me, but I think it's time you did. Alex has been living a double life, and I'm the other woman. My heart stopped. This had to be some sick joke. But then I saw the pictures attached. Alex, not just with this woman, but with children, 3 of them, each bearing a resemblance to the man I called my husband. I was still reeling from the shock when Alex walked in, earlier than usual. Back so soon? I managed to say, my voice a mere whisper. He shrugged, clearly oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Yeah, things were slow at the office. I held up my phone, the picture of him with that woman and the children filling the screen. Slow, huh? Is this how you kill time? His face went white, the mask of indifference crumbling in an instant. Emma, what? Where did you get this? The words felt heavy, each one a stone sinking in the pit of my stomach. From her, Alex. Your other woman. He tried to grab the phone, but I pulled away, my eyes never leaving his. So, it's true then? The late nights, the distance. It wasn't just work, it was them. Alex sank into a chair, his facade shattered. Emma, listen, it's not what you think. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the silence. Not what I think. Alex, the pictures don't lie. You have a whole other family. How long? How long have you been lying to me? He buried his face in his hands, a defeated figure. A few years. It started small, I didn't mean for it to go this far. A few years. The words hung in the air, a testament to the lie my life had become. And the children, Alex? Are they yours? He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The truth was right there, in the silence, in the photos, in the years of deceit. You need to leave, Alex. Now, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. And with that, he left, the sound of the closing door marking the end of our story. I sat there, alone, holding our son, the only real thing in the mess that was my life. Just when the dust seemed to be settling, life decided to throw another curveball. I was in the middle of a feeding session with my son when the doorbell rang, slicing through the quiet of the afternoon. Expecting maybe a delivery or a neighbor, I was completely taken aback to see Alex, looking sheepish, and a woman I recognized from the photos, the other woman, standing boldly in my doorway. Before I could even react, she pushed past me into the house. Her eyes roamed around, taking in every detail of the home I had put my heart into. This is quite the place you've got here, Emma. Cozy and spacious. Perfect for a family, don't you think, Alex? She said, her voice dripping with a mix of mockery and entitlement. Alex didn't meet my gaze, his shame evident, but his voice silent. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my composure in the face of this intrusion. And what family would that be? Because the last time I checked, this was my home, I retorted, standing protectively in front of my son's crib. She smirked, a calculated glint in her eye. Well, the family Alex should have been with all along. Me and our 3 kids. You see, we need this house more than you do. A big, beautiful house for a big family. You understand, right? The audacity of her words struck a nerve. I was fuming, each word from her mouth fueling my anger. Understand? I understand perfectly. You're delusional if you think you can just barge in here and lay claim to what's mine. Alex has no right to this house, and neither do you. Alex finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Emma, maybe we should discuss this. Discuss? I snapped, my patience wearing thin. You think after everything, we're just going to sit down and have a chat about you handing over my house to your mistress and your other children? The woman paced around, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Look, Emma, it's simple. You've got 1 kid, a small apartment will do. We've got 3, we need the space. It's only fair. Fair? The word echoed in my mind, a cruel joke in the face of everything that was happening. Fair? You want to talk about fair? There's nothing fair about betrayal, about lies, about breaking a family. You have no idea what fair is. She turned to Alex, seeking affirmation. Tell her, Alex. Tell her we'll be moving in. She's got a week to clear out. Alex avoided my gaze, his shoulders slumped, the picture of defeat and cowardice. Emma, I don't know what to say. The standoff was tense, the air thick with unsaid words and unspoken threats. But as they left, the woman throwing a spiteful glance over her shoulder and Alex not even daring to look back, I knew that this was far from over. After the door slammed shut behind Alex and his mistress, I was left standing in the silence of my home, my mind racing. The nerve of them, coming into my house, threatening to take everything I held dear. But as the initial shock subsided, a plan began to form. It was time to reveal the truth, time to claim what was rightfully mine. The doorbell rang, its chime echoing like the start of a showdown. There they stood, Alex looking more defeated than ever, and his mistress, her arrogance undiminished. "Time's up, Emma. We're here to move in. Did you pack your stuff?" she demanded, her eyes gleaming with triumph. I stood in the doorway, my stance firm. "Actually, I didn't pack. And you're not moving in. This house is mine, and I have the documents to prove it." The woman's face faltered, confusion mixing with her anger. "What are you talking about? This is Alex's house too. We have rights." I couldn't help but smirk, the tables finally turning. "No, you see, that's where you're wrong. This house was a gift from my parents to me. Alex's name isn't on any of the documents. He has no claim over this property." Alex shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Emma, I thought we could work something out." "Work something out? After you cheated, lied, and then tried to kick me and your son out of our home?" "I don't think so, Alex." The mistress interjected, her voice shrill with panic. "This can't be happening. You're lying. Alex, tell her she's lying." But Alex remained silent, his eyes downcast, the truth of the situation finally dawning on him. "It's not a lie," I said, my voice steady. "This house is mine, and you have no legal right to be here. So, I suggest you leave before I call the police." The woman's eyes darted to Alex, seeking confirmation or maybe denial. But Alex stood silent, his head hung low, the truth too heavy to bear. "But we have a family, we need this house. You can't just throw us out," she protested, her voice tinged with desperation. "The only thing I'm throwing out is the lies," I countered. "And while we're at it, let's talk about Alex's job, shall we? He's not the high-flying executive you think he is. He's a clerk, a simple office worker. Your dreams of a lavish life in this house are just that, dreams." The revelation hit her like a physical blow, her face contorting with rage and disbelief. "A clerk? You're lying. Alex, tell her she's lying." Alex, however, remained silent, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The charade was over, the truth laid bare for all to see. "You've been living in a fantasy, fed by Alex's lies. But it ends now," I declared, my voice firm. "You have no place here. It's time for you both to leave." The confrontation was intense, the air thick with tension and unsaid words. But as they turned to leave, the mistress's parting glance was filled with venom and vows of revenge. "This isn't the end, Emma. You'll regret this," she hissed, her dreams shattered by the harsh light of truth. It was a crisp morning, the kind that usually promised a peaceful start, but peace was a luxury I could no longer afford. The sound of the doorbell shattered the calm like a rock through a window. As I opened the door, my heart sank. There she stood, Alex's mistress, her face twisted into a smirk, her children huddled behind her. "You've got some nerve, showing up here again," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The mistress didn't falter. "I've got every right, Emma. These kids," she gestured to the innocent faces behind her, "they deserve a proper home. Your home." I couldn't help but scoff. "Deserve? The only thing you deserve is a reality check. This is my house, and you're not welcome here." Her smirk widened, her voice growing louder. "Oh, I'm not welcome? We'll see about that. You think you can just sit in this big, fancy house all alone with your baby while my kids suffer? You're more heartless than I thought." Her words, sharp and accusing, were meant to wound, and they did. But I wasn't about to let her see that. Heartless? I'm not the one tearing families apart, disrupting lives. You did that all on your own. The neighbors, drawn by her shrill voice, had begun to gather, their whispers like a chorus in the background. She relished the audience, her theatrics reaching new heights. "Look at this, folks. Emma here thinks she's too good to share. Thinks this palace is only for her and her baby. What about my children? Don't they deserve a home too? I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to slam the door in her face. Your children deserve better, that's for sure. Better than a mother who uses them as pawns in her twisted games. She stepped closer, her eyes flashing with anger. You think you can judge me, Emma? You, who had everything handed to her on a silver platter. My kids have had to fight for every little thing in their lives. And now, you want to deny them a roof over their heads? I shook my head, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. I'm not denying them anything. Their father, the man you stole from me, he's the one you should be looking at. He's the one who's failed them, and you. The mistress's face reddened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Alex promised us a better life. He promised we'd have this house. Are you going to stand there and tell me those were all lies? Her words hung heavy in the air, a painful reminder of Alex's betrayal. Promises from Alex aren't worth much these days, it seems. But one thing's for sure, this house isn't part of his empty promises. It's mine, and you have no claim to it. She bristled, her composure slipping. I'm not leaving, Emma. Not until you do right by these kids. I'll camp out here if I have to. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of cold-hearted witch lives in this mansion. I stared at her, the absurdity of the situation hitting me full force. You're going to camp out? On my property? I don't think so. This is your last warning. Leave now, or I'll call the police. Her eyes darted around, the gathered neighbors serving as her audience. But the resolve in my voice must have hit a nerve. She gathered her children, her parting shot a venomous glare. This isn't over, Emma. You think you've won, but you've just started a war. The drama of the previous week still hung heavy in my home, like a cloud refusing to move on. I was Emma, a woman who thought she had seen it all, until the doorbell rang again, bringing a chapter one thought I had closed. There he was, Alex, standing on my doorstep, his face a mixture of regret and desperation. The sight of him, after everything, sparked a fury I hadn't known I possessed. What are you doing here, Alex? Haven't you done enough? I spat, my words sharp and unforgiving. He looked down, his hands fidgeting nervously. Emma, I need to talk to you. It's important. I crossed my arms, my stance unyielding. Talk? After you tried to take my home, after all the lies? You must be kidding. He swallowed hard, a man grasping at straws. Please, Emma. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. I see that now. I was wrong, so wrong. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. A mistake? Is that what you call it? You destroyed our family, Alex. You chose her, chose that life. And now you're here, what, asking for forgiveness? His eyes met mine, a glimmer of the man I once knew flickering in their depths. Not just forgiveness, Emma. I want to come back. I want to make things right. For you, for our son. The audacity of his request left me speechless. How could he stand there, asking for a second chance as if he could erase the past with a few words? You want to come back? After everything? You think you can just walk back into our lives like nothing happened? I asked, my voice rising with every word. He nodded, a desperate man clinging to a lifeline. Yes, Emma. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try. I'll do anything, everything to make it up to you, to our son. I shook my head, the finality of my decision clear in my mind. It's too late, Alex. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. We are moving on, without you. His shoulders slumped, defeat etched into every line of his face. Emma, please. Don't do this. Think of our son. He needs his father. I felt a pang in my heart, for the life we could have had, for the family that was broken beyond repair. He needed his father, and where were you? With her, with them. You're not the man we need, Alex. It's time you realized that. He stood there for a moment longer, a man lost in the ruins of his own making. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his figure disappearing into the night. The final pieces of my old life had fallen away, leaving space for something new, something mine. The divorce papers were signed, and Alex was now just a person from my past, a shadow that no longer darkened my door. He was ordered to pay alimony for our son, a small justice in the grand scheme of things. Sitting in my quiet living room, I reflected on the tumultuous journey. The phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was Lisa, her voice carrying the latest gossip. "Hey, Emma, you won't believe this. Alex and his mistress are crammed into a tiny apartment. Word is, they do nothing but fight, day in and day out." I couldn't help but feel a twinge of vindication. Well, can't say I'm surprised. You reap what you sow, right? Lisa chuckled. True that. How are you holding up, though? All this must be tough. I took a sip of my tea, its warmth comforting. It's been a ride, Lisa. But, I'm getting there. Each day feels a bit lighter, a bit more mine. You're the strongest person I know, Emma. And hey, if you need anything, I'm just a call away, alright? Her words were a balm, soothing the lingering sting of the past. Thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate it. The conversation drifted to lighter topics, the normalcy a welcome change. After hanging up, I gazed around the room. This was my space, my sanctuary. The battles fought within these walls had left scars, but they were healing, turning into stories of strength and resilience. I picked up my camera, an old friend I had neglected. The weight of it in my hands felt right. I snapped a few pictures of the room, of my son's toys, of the life that was slowly piecing itself back together. Each click of the shutter was a declaration, a statement that while the past was a part of me, it didn't define me. As I put my son to bed that night, his tiny hand clutching my finger, I whispered promises of a future bright and unburdened. Outside, the stars twinkled, a vast canvas of possibilities stretching out before us. Alex and his mistress were just a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Our story, the one that truly mattered, was just beginning, and it was going to be a beautiful one. Life in my early years was a silent movie, played within the confines of a home that felt more like a fortress. My family, bound by strict norms that bordered on the extreme, watched my every move, every word, and every breath I took. It was a life of muted colors, where expressions were guarded, and spontaneity was a distant dream. My grandmother, Eleanor, was the first crack in that rigid world. She saw the life I was living and decided it was no life for a child. With a determination that matched her compassion, she pulled me out of that house when I was 13 and introduced me to a world where love wasn't just a whispered word but an everyday reality. Under her care, I blossomed. I traded silence for soft laughter, restrictions for freedom, and fear for love. But the shadows of my early years lingered, shaping me into a shy, modest young woman, whose comfort zone was the small, safe world I had built around myself. Web design became my chosen path, a career that allowed me to weave my creativity into the fabric of the digital world while staying within the protective walls of my home. My laptop was my window to the world, a world where I could be bold in my designs yet safeguarded from the direct gaze of society. On my 30th birthday, Grandma Eleanor decided it was time for me to meet someone, a thought that both thrilled and terrified me. Through her network, she found Ethan, a man just a few years my senior, known for his charm and seemingly gentle nature. Our first meeting was at a local diner, a place where the aroma of coffee and the buzz of quiet conversations created a comforting backdrop. Ethan walked in, his presence like a new chapter waiting to be written. "Lily, right?" Your grandma's told me so much about you. Heard you're quite the artist with your web designs, Ethan said, his voice smooth, his smile easy. A blush crept up my cheeks, unaccustomed to such direct praise. Thank you, Ethan. That's kind of you to say. And yes, design is my passion. As we talked, a connection began to form, gentle and tentative, like the first rays of sun after a long night. Ethan's words were like a balm, soothing the years of conditioned caution and reserve. Lily, there's something about you. Your modesty, it's refreshing in this loud world. It's like discovering a quiet cove in a stormy sea, he said, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that stirred something deep within me. His words, so full of promise and understanding, touched a part of me that I had kept hidden, locked away from the world. You know, Lily, I've always believed that true strength lies in being yourself, in a world that tries to make you like everyone else. I see that strength in you, Ethan continued, his voice sincere and warm. The days following that first meeting with Ethan were like stepping into a new world, one where the colors were brighter, and life felt more vivid. Our encounters were simple but meaningful, centered around long conversations over coffee, walks in the park, and shared laughter that seemed to echo long after we parted. One brisk afternoon, as we strolled through the park with leaves crunching under our feet, Ethan turned to me, his eyes shining with an idea. Lily, you ever been to the old Wilson's farm? They've got this apple orchard, look straight out at a postcard in the fall. I shook my head, a smile spreading across my face. Can't say I have, Ethan. My adventures have been pretty limited to the digital world, you know? He chuckled, a sound that warmed me from the inside out. Well, guess it's about time we change that. What'd you say about going there this Saturday? They say there's nothing like picking apples on a crisp fall morning. And just like that, our quiet, comfortable routine expanded to include these little adventures. Each moment with Ethan felt like a step away from my old life, a life of restrictions and silence, into something more vibrant, more alive. The days turned into weeks, and the connection between us grew stronger, more profound. It wasn't just about shared interests or mutual attraction, it was about understanding, about finding someone who saw me for who I was and cherished that. One cool evening, as we sat on a bench watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ethan's voice broke the comfortable silence between us. Lily, I've gotta tell you, these past weeks with you, they've been something else. You've got this quiet strength, this grace about you. It's rare, and it's beautiful, he said, his words wrapping around me like a warm blanket. His compliment caught me off guard, and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what to say. You make it easy to be myself, to open up. He took my hand in his touch gentle yet firm. That's all I ask, Lily. For you to be yourself. Because who you are is pretty amazing. I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, we can turn this us into something more, something lasting. His words hung in the air, a question and a promise all at once. I looked into his eyes, seeing not just the man I had come to know and care for, but a future, a possibility of a life filled with laughter, understanding, and love. I'd like that, Ethan. More than you know, I replied, my heart feeling lighter, more hopeful than it had in years. Life took a sharp turn when I moved in with Ethan and his mother, Mrs. Clayton. The house, which I had imagined would be a sanctuary of love and warmth, quickly revealed itself as a battleground of expectations and criticism. It was on the first morning in my new home that Mrs. Clayton laid down the law. I was in the kitchen, trying to make a good impression by preparing breakfast, when she walked in, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Lily, let's get one thing straight. You're part of this family now, and in this house, we have rules. You're gonna take care of the cooking and the cleaning. Got it? Her voice was sharp, leaving no room for protest. Taken aback, I could only nod. Yes, Mrs. Clayton. I understand. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes narrowed as she inspected the kitchen. And I expect things to be done right. I run a tight ship here. No slacking. With that, she left the room, leaving me to absorb the reality of my new life. Each day became a relentless cycle of household chores. I'd wake up early, cook breakfast, then clean, then work on my web design projects, and then cook again. It was as if my entire existence had been reduced to serving the needs of the house. Ethan, whom I had thought to be my partner and protector, seemed oblivious to the strain I was under. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I decided to voice my concerns. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something," I started, my hands nervously twisting the dish towel. He looked up from his laptop, his expression one of mild annoyance. "What's up, Lily?" "It's about your mom, and the housework. It's a lot. And I feel like it's all on me," I said, the words spilling out in a rush. Ethan's eyes went back to his screen as he shrugged. "Well, yeah. Mom's set in her ways. It's just how things are done here. You'll get used to it." "But, Ethan, it's not fair. It's not right. I'm working too, and I have my own life. I'm not just here to cook and clean," I protested, feeling a spark of defiance ignite within me. Ethan sighed, a sound of exasperation. "Lily, don't make a big deal out of this. Mom's the boss of the house. Just try to keep her happy, okay?" His words felt like a slap, a stark reminder that my feelings, my exhaustion, were of little consequence in this household. The web of control in the Clayton household tightened its grip around me as the days passed. It wasn't just about the cooking and cleaning anymore. My modest earnings from web design, which I had cherished as my own, became the next target in the Clayton family's playbook of dominance. It was a typical evening. I was sitting at the dining table, finalizing a project on my laptop, when Ethan and Mrs. Clayton cornered me with a conversation I wasn't prepared for. "Lily, we need to talk about your work," Ethan started, his tone serious. I looked up, puzzled. "My work? What about it?" Mrs. Clayton interjected, her voice sharp and commanding. "Your money, dear. It's time you start contributing to the household. You live here, after all." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "But I do contribute, Mrs. Clayton. I take care of the house, the meals." Ethan cut me off. "That's not enough, Lily. We're talking about financial contribution. Your earnings should be going into the family account. It's only fair." The unfairness of it all hit me like a wave. "But that's my money, Ethan. I earn it. I have my own expenses, my own needs." Mrs. Clayton scoffed. "Needs? What needs could you possibly have that are more important than this family?" "No, dear, your place is to support this household, just like we support you." Ethan nodded in agreement, his eyes void of the understanding and warmth they once held. "It's decided then. From now on, your earnings go to the family account. I'll take care of the finances." I felt cornered, trapped. The little financial independence I had was being stripped away, leaving me more vulnerable than ever. "But Ethan, this isn't right. It's not fair. I should have a say in how my money is used." He shrugged, a cold, dismissive gesture that sent shivers down my spine. "Fair? Life's not fair, Lily. You're part of this family now, and this is how things work here." Mrs. Clayton's eyes bore into me, ensuring her message was loud and clear. "You'll thank us later, dear. We're teaching you how to be part of a family, how to be a proper wife." As they left me there, alone with my racing thoughts, the reality of my situation became painfully clear. My income, my hard-earned money, was now under their control. Trapped in the Clayton household, my life had become a never-ending cycle of servitude. The financial control Ethan and his mother exerted over me was suffocating. My earnings, once a source of independence, were now tightly gripped in their hands. The situation was unbearable, yet I felt powerless to change it. One day, I decided to seek solace in the one place I always felt understood, the web design forum. Typing away on my laptop, I poured my heart out to Sarah, a fellow designer I had befriended online. Sarah, I'm in a bad place. Ethan and his mom, they're controlling everything, even my earnings. I don't know what to do, I typed, the words on the screen blurring through my tears. Almost instantly, Sarah's reply popped up. Lily, that's not right. They're manipulating you. That's financial abuse, you know. Her words were a jolt of reality. Abuse? I typed back, the word feeling foreign yet painfully accurate. Yes, abuse. Lily, you need to protect yourself. Read up on psychological abuse and financial control. Knowledge is power, Sarah urged. Taking her advice to heart, I started reading. Books on psychology, articles on financial abuse, stories of people who had walked the path I was on. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton weren't just overbearing, they were abusers, using manipulation and control to keep me under their thumb. One evening, as I was absorbed in a book on psychological growth, Mrs. Clayton barged into my room, her eyes scanning the title in my hands. What's this nonsense you're reading, Lily? She demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. It's a book on personal growth, Mrs. Clayton, I replied, a newfound strength in my voice. She snorted, personal growth? Don't fill your head with such rubbish. Your place is here, taking care of this family, not reading silly books. But her words, which would have once sent me into a spiral of self-doubt, now bounced off me. I had begun to see through their game, to understand the dynamics of control and abuse. Ethan, your mother thinks my reading is rubbish, I said later that evening, hoping to find an ally in him. Ethan, however, was far from supportive. Mom's right, Lily. You're getting ideas above your station. Focus on your duties here. That's what's important. His words were a crushing blow, yet they only fueled my determination. It was clear now, I was alone in this fight. But I was no longer the timid, compliant Lily they thought they knew. The knowledge I had armed myself with was my weapon, and I was ready to use it. Life at the Claytons had pushed me to my limits. I had been enduring, silently suffering under the weight of their control and manipulation. But everything changed the day fate intervened in the most unexpected way. It was a regular morning, and I was out running errands, lost in my thoughts, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a car came speeding around the corner. Before I could react, everything went black. I woke up in a sterile hospital room, my body aching and my mind foggy. As my vision cleared, I saw Ethan and Mrs. Clayton standing by my bedside. But their expressions weren't of concern or worry, they were of irritation and anger. Lily, what were you thinking, wandering around like that? Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is for us? Ethan's voice was harsh, void of any warmth. Mrs. Clayton chimed in, her words sharp and cold. Yes, and now who's going to take care of the house, the cooking, the cleaning? You've put us in quite a bind, Lily. I lay there, stunned, not by the pain from my injuries, but by the sheer lack of empathy from the people I had been living with. I'm sorry. I managed to whisper, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Ethan's face twisted into a scowl. Sorry doesn't cut it, Lily. We need you back on your feet, taking care of your responsibilities. This little stunt of yours is unacceptable. Mrs. Clayton nodded in agreement, her eyes scanning me with disdain. Absolutely. And once you're back, we expect you to make up for the lost time. No slacking. Their words, their complete disregard for my well-being, lit a fire within me. It was the turning point, the moment I realized that I was nothing more than a convenience to them, a tool to be used and discarded at will. Enough, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not your maid, not your cook, not your ATM. I'm a human being, and I deserve respect, care, and empathy, none of which you've shown." Ethan's eyes widened in shock, clearly not expecting resistance. "Lily, you're not thinking straight. You need to calm down and think about your duties, your place in this family." But I was done. Done with being told my place, done with being treated like a nobody. "My place," I said, my voice steady, "is not here, not with you. I deserve better, and I will have better." The doctor walked in at that moment, breaking the tension. He explained my injuries, the fractures, and the long road to recovery. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's faces fell as they realized the implications, the weeks of convalescence, the medical expenses, and the absence of their obedient housekeeper. Ethan, his voice laced with frustration, turned to me. "If you think you're going to sit back and enjoy a vacation at our expense, you're mistaken. If you're not back on your feet and fulfilling your duties in a month, consider this marriage over." For the first time, his threat didn't scare me, it liberated me. "Ethan," I said, a smile tugging at the corners of my bruised lips, "I'm ready for that divorce. It's the best news I've heard in months." Their shocked faces were the last things I saw before they stormed out of the room. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized the crash hadn't just broken my bones, it had shattered the chains that bound me. A couple of days after Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's disastrous visit, a nurse wheeled in a small cart with my personal belongings, a bag that Ethan had left for me. Among the items was my laptop, my gateway to the world and, more importantly, to my independence. As I slowly, painfully opened the laptop, the screen welcomed me like an old friend. I was about to embark on the most crucial project of my life, my liberation. I began by drafting an email to my lawyer, detailing the years of financial control, emotional manipulation, and the recent threats from Ethan and his mother. My fingers trembled, but with each word typed, I felt stronger, more in control. A few days later, Ethan came to visit, his demeanor a mix of anger and disbelief. "Lily, what's this nonsense about a lawyer? You think you can take me on?" he scoffed, his voice echoing off the sterile walls. I looked at him, my resolve unwavering. "It's not nonsense, Ethan. It's the truth. I'm done being your puppet. I'm taking back my life, my money, my dignity." He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. You? You don't have the guts. You're nothing without me, without us." But I wasn't the old Lily anymore. "Watch me, Ethan. You and your mother have controlled and used me for long enough. Those days are over." His face reddened, a vein throbbing in his neck. "You'll regret this, Lily. You'll come crawling back." I shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. "I'd rather crawl through fire than come back to you." After Ethan stormed out, the days blended into weeks. My body was healing, but more importantly, my spirit was healing too. I spent hours reading, learning, and preparing for the battle ahead. The hospital room, once a symbol of my vulnerability, had become my war room. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked the beginning of my new life. Grandma Eleanor, frail but with a spirit as strong as ever, was by my side as I walked out of the hospital. Her eyes, filled with tears of pride and relief, told me all I needed to know. I was on the right path. "Grandma, I'm scared, but I'm ready," I told her, my voice steady. She squeezed my hand. "I know, my dear. And you're not alone. We're in this together." The journey back to Grandma Eleanor's house was quiet, but it was a silence filled with determination and hope. The old Lily was gone, and in her place stood a woman ready to reclaim her life, one step at a time. The morning of the hearing, Grandma Eleanor and I sat at the kitchen table, a silent understanding between us. "Lily, you ready for this?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. I nodded, feeling a surge of strength from her unwavering support. "I am, Grandma. It's time to put an end to this, once and for all." At the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton were already there, their faces a mask of arrogance and disbelief. They still couldn't fathom that the once submissive Lily was challenging them. As we walked past them, Ethan's voice, cold and mocking, reached my ears. "You really think you can win this, Lily? You're just a nobody." I stopped, turning to face him, my gaze unflinching. "I am somebody, Ethan. And today, you'll see just how much you underestimated me." The court proceedings were a blur, with testimonies given and evidence presented. My lawyer was a pillar of strength, laying out the years of financial and emotional abuse with precision and clarity. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's lawyer tried to discredit me, painting me as an ungrateful wife. But the recordings I had made, the meticulous records of their controlling behavior, and the financial statements spoke louder than their lies. As the judge pronounced the verdict, favoring me and granting significant compensation, the look of shock and defeat on Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's faces was a sight I would never forget. Outside the courthouse, Ethan approached, his demeanor now that of a defeated man. "Lily, please, let's talk about this. We can settle it without the compensation. You don't have to do this." I looked at him, the man I once believed would protect me, now a mere shadow of his former self. "No, Ethan. You had your chance. You chose to control and abuse instead of love and respect. This is the consequence of your actions." Mrs. Clayton, her pride shattered, joined in, her voice trembling. "Lily, please, I'm an old woman. Have some mercy." I shook my head, the final pieces of the emotional shackles they had bound me with falling away. "Mercy was what I begged for when you controlled every aspect of my life, Mrs. Clayton. It's too late for that now." As Grandma Eleanor and I walked away, the weight of years of oppression lifting off my shoulders, I knew that this was more than just a legal victory. It was the triumph of justice, the affirmation of my strength, and the beginning of a new chapter. But the story didn't end there. News of Ethan's and Mrs. Clayton's actions spread, reaching Ethan's workplace. His colleagues started looking at him differently, whispers followed him around, and soon, his position at work was demoted. He was a shadow of his former self, condemned and despised for his actions. Mrs. Clayton faced her own downfall. She found herself ostracized, her name synonymous with manipulation and cruelty. Decent society closed its doors on her, her past actions casting a long shadow over her present. As for me, life was opening new doors. It was a chance to start fresh, to build a life on my terms. The battle was tough, but it led to a new beginning, a future where I was no longer a victim, but the author of my own story. The final reckoning was not just an end, but a promise of a new, brighter dawn. I remember the day Lily was born like it was yesterday. I was 8, a skinny girl with wide eyes and a head full of dreams. My parents, John and Sarah, were ordinary folks. Dad worked at a local factory, and Mom stayed at home. Life was simple until Lily came along. "Look at her, Sarah. She's got your eyes," Dad had cooed, holding Lily for the first time. Mom had smiled, a tired but triumphant smile. "And your nose, John." I stood by the door, clutching my ragged doll, waiting for someone to notice me. "Can I see Lily?" I asked timidly. Mom glanced at me, her eyes barely registering my presence. "Not now, Linda. Lily needs rest, and so do I." School wasn't much better. Kids can be cruel when they smell vulnerability. "Hey, Scarecrow Linda," Jack, the class bully, would sneer as he tugged at my faded dress. "Did you get your clothes from the trash?" I tried to ignore them, but words hurt more than punches. At home, Lily grew into a pampered princess. She'd scribble in my textbooks and giggle. "Look, Linda, I'm helping you with homework." I'd sigh. "Lily, please don't do that. I need those for school." One day, she went too far, pouring paint over my only good dress. I yelled at her, but she just cried. That's when Mom stormed in. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes flashing. "Lily ruined my dress," I said, holding up the stained fabric. Mom didn't even look at the dress. "How dare you yell at your sister? Go to your room, Linda. No dessert for a week." Grandma was the only one who understood. "Don't let them get you down, Linda," she'd say. Her house was my refuge, filled with books and love. She taught me to escape into stories, to live 1,000 lives within those worn pages. The day Grandma passed away was the day I lost my true home. I remember coming back from school, my heart heavy, walking into a house filled with her absence. My parents were in the living room, already talking about her belongings. "We should start clearing out her stuff," Dad said, his voice devoid of any sadness. Mom was looking through a list. "And her library? Those dusty old books?" I lingered at the doorway, listening, a tightness growing in my chest. "Just get rid of them," Dad shrugged. "Who needs all that old paper?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "Can I have Grandma's books?" I blurted out, stepping into the room. "Please?" They both turned, almost surprised to see me. "Sure, take them," Mom said dismissively. "We don't have any use for them anyway." I spent the next days transferring Grandma's books to my room, each one a piece of her I wasn't ready to lose. Life moved on in its cruel pace. As high school came to an end, my parents made an offer I didn't expect. "We'll pay for your college," Mom announced one evening. "You can study accounting or something practical." I remember feeling a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Really? Why?" I asked. "It's our duty," Dad said. "Just don't expect any more handouts after this." College was my escape, a chance to be more than just the overlooked sister. But even that came with its price. A few weeks into my part-time job at the library, Mom cornered me. "You're making money now. It's only fair you start paying us back for your tuition." I was stunned. "But you said you'd pay for my college." "I didn't ask for this." "Don't be ungrateful," she snapped. "Half your salary, that's the deal." The injustice of it burned in me, but I had no choice. Half of what little I earned went straight into their pockets. Years passed in this exhausting cycle: work, study, pay my unfair dues. My graduation was supposed to be a celebration, but it felt more like a reminder of the shackles I couldn't escape. At the dinner table, with Lily smirking beside me, my parents dropped another bombshell. "Now that you're working full-time, we expect you to continue paying us," Dad said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "What?" I was incredulous. "But I've been paying you all through college." "When does this end?" "It ends when we say it does," Mom said coldly. "You owe us, Linda." I felt a mixture of anger and helplessness. "This isn't fair," I protested. "Life isn't fair," Dad retorted. "You live under our roof. You follow our rules." And just like that, my dreams of independence, of a life where I could be my own person, were crushed under the weight of their greed and entitlement. In my room that night, surrounded by Grandma's books, I realized the stark contrast between the warmth and love they represented and the cold, calculating nature of my own family. These books were my only legacy, the only thing that connected me to a sense of belonging, of being understood. Life after college became a monotonous cycle of work and fatigue. Every payday, the same scene would unfold at home. "Linda, have you got your paycheck yet?" Mom would ask, her hand already outstretched, the moment I stepped through the door. I'd hand over half of my earnings without a word. It had become a routine, a bitter pill I swallowed each month. One evening, I mustered the courage to confront them. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking," I began hesitantly. "Maybe I can start keeping a bit more of my salary. I need to save up, maybe for a place of my own." Mom's expression hardened. "Your own place? Don't be ridiculous. You owe us, Linda. We paid for your education. But I've been paying back. Isn't that enough? I protested, feeling a surge of frustration. Enough? You think a few $1,000s cover your debt to us? Dad's voice rose. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. You owe us for a lifetime. I felt my heart sink. But I never asked for any of this. I just wanted to go to college. And who do you think paid for that? You think that was free? Mom snapped. No, Linda, you'll continue paying us, just as you have been. The unfairness of it all was suffocating. I had hoped, foolishly, that they might see reason, but their entitlement knew no bounds. Lily, ever the favored child, never missed a chance to taunt me. Look at our little accountant, can't even afford a new dress, she'd sneer, flaunting the latest gadget or outfit they'd bought her. I remember one particularly hard day at work. I had stayed late, trying to finish a complex report. Exhausted, I reached home to find my family had ordered takeout, my favorite Thai food. For a moment, my spirits lifted. Is there any left for me? I asked, hopeful. Mom shrugged. You should have been here earlier. Besides, you can buy your own food with your big salary. I retreated to my room, too tired to argue. Dinner that night was a stale sandwich and a cup of tea. Alone in my room, surrounded by the comforting presence of my grandmother's books, I felt the full weight of the life I was trapped in. I longed for more, for freedom, for a chance to live for myself. But every attempt to break free was met with guilt trips and reminders of a debt that I was beginning to realize might not even be mine. My life at home had become a ceaseless routine of work and servitude. Each day, I'd return from my job as an accountant, mentally drained, only to be greeted by the chaos of my family's demands. One evening, I came home to find the living room in a mess. Dad was lounging on the sofa, watching TV, while Lily was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by a pile of clothes. Linda, you're back. Finally, Dad said without looking away from the screen. Clean up this mess, will you? And start dinner, we're hungry. But I've just got back from work, I protested weakly, my shoulders slumping. Work? You call sitting in an office all day work? Lily scoffed, not bothering to lift her gaze from her phone. Try doing something useful for a change. Their words stung, but I was too tired to argue. Silently, I began picking up the clothes, my mind heavy with resentment. As I cooked dinner, the familiar sense of injustice gnawed at me. I was more than just their housekeeper, more than their source of income. But in their eyes, I was nothing more than an extension of their will, a means to an end. The next morning, I was met with another list of demands. Linda, take Lily shopping today. She needs new clothes, Mom instructed as I was about to leave for work. But I have a busy day at the office, I said, my voice strained with frustration. Oh, what's more important? Your job or your family? Mom retorted, her tone sharp. The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. My job was important only when it benefited them. Reluctantly, I agreed to take Lily shopping after work, sacrificing the little personal time I had left. At the mall, Lily flitted from store to store, her excitement in stark contrast to my growing despair. Isn't this dress cute, Linda? She gushed, holding up an expensive designer dress. Buy it for me. You owe us, after all. I looked at the price tag and felt a pang in my chest. Lily, this is too much. I can't afford this. Can't afford it? But you're the big earner in the family, she taunted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Stop being so stingy. I bought the dress, my heart heavy with the knowledge that this was just another link in the chain that bound me to them. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that my life had become a cycle of giving my time, my money, my energy, with nothing in return. I was trapped in a life of servitude, catering to the whims of a family that saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. The day of my 30th birthday dawned just like any other day. I woke up early, hoping maybe, just maybe, this day would be different. That my family would remember and we'd have a small celebration, a moment of happiness. I walked into the kitchen where Mom, Dad, and Lily were already having breakfast. "Good morning," I said softly. Dad glanced up. "Morning. Make sure you're not late for work." I waited, hoping for more, but there was just silence. My heart sank. They had forgotten. It was just another day for them. I tried to hide my disappointment as I prepared my breakfast. The clock ticked away, each second a reminder of how little they cared. As I was about to leave for work, I mustered up the courage to remind them. "You know, today is my birthday," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mom looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before it vanished. "Oh, is it? Well, happy birthday. Don't expect us to throw a party." Lily snickered. "Yeah, happy birthday, Linda. Maybe you can treat yourself to something nice with your big paycheck." Their words stung like 1,000 needles. I left the house, holding back tears, feeling more alone than ever. The day at work was long and tiring. When I returned home, I hoped maybe they'd have a change of heart. But the house was just as I'd left it. I found Mom, Dad, and Lily in the living room, ordering food from a fancy restaurant over the phone. My hopes dissipated like mist. "Are we expecting guests?" I asked, a glimmer of hope reigniting. "No, just felt like ordering something nice," Mom said casually. "You can join us if you want." I watched as they ordered dish after dish, my heart sinking with each click of the phone. "Should I get the lobster or the steak?" Lily mused aloud. "You should get both," Mom encouraged. I stood there, a bystander in my own home. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday, they didn't care. I retreated to my room, the walls echoing with their laughter and chatter. I sat on my bed, surrounded by Grandma's books, the only gifts I'd ever truly treasured. In the silence of my room, I called my Aunt Mary, the only other person who had ever shown me kindness. She answered with a warm, "Happy birthday, Linda. How are you, dear?" Her words, so simple yet so full of warmth, brought tears to my eyes. We talked for a while, and she shared stories about Grandma, bringing a smile to my face. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "You know, your grandmother would be so proud of you. She always wanted the best for you. That's why she left the money for your education." I was confused. "What money, Aunt Mary?" "The money she saved up for your college. Didn't your parents tell you? She was so determined to give you a good start in life." My world spun. Grandma had paid for my college? All these years, my parents had lied, making me believe I owed them. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. The truth was a key, unlocking the chains I'd been bound with for so long. My parents had manipulated me, used me, all based on a lie. That night, I couldn't sleep. The revelation churned in my mind, a mix of anger, betrayal, and a newfound sense of determination. I couldn't let them control me anymore. I had to break free, to find my own path. The next morning, I confronted them. "I know about the money Grandma left for my education. Why did you lie to me?" Their reactions were a mix of shock and defensiveness. "We did what we had to do," Mom said coldly. "We're your parents. It's your duty to support us." "Duty? You lied and made me your servant," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with emotion. Dad just rolled her eyes. "Drama queen. You should be grateful we let you live here." That was the final straw. I was done being their scapegoat, their cash cow. It was time for me to take control of my life. The morning after my birthday was a new beginning. The sun seemed brighter, the air fresher, as if the world was acknowledging my resolve. I had packed my things quietly, trying to avoid any early confrontations. But as I was about to leave, Mom and Lily confronted me in the hallway, blocking my path. "Where do you think you're going with those bags?" Mom asked, her eyes narrowing. "I'm leaving," I stated, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. Mom's tone turned pleading. "Linda, you can't do this to us. We're your family. Where will you go?" "Anywhere but here," I said, stepping around them. "I deserve better than this. I deserve a life." As I walked out the door, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The shackles of guilt and obligation that had held me down for so long were finally broken. I didn't look back. I walked towards the bus stop, my heart filled with a mix of fear and excitement. I was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time, it was a path that I had chosen for myself. On the bus, I called a number I had written down a few months back, an advertisement for an apartment rental. The voice on the other end was friendly and understanding. By the time the bus reached my stop, I had arranged to view the apartment later that day. The apartment was small, but cozy, a stark contrast to the coldness of my family home. As I signed the lease, I felt a sense of ownership and independence I had never experienced before. That night, in my new apartment, surrounded by my grandmother's books, I finally felt at peace. I cooked a simple dinner for myself, enjoying every bite without the weight of judgment or expectation. My phone rang several times that evening, the caller ID showing my family's number. But I didn't answer. I was done letting them control my life. Instead, I curled up on the small sofa with a book, losing myself in a story of adventure and courage. It was like Grandma was there with me, her spirit encouraging me to live the life I was meant to have. In the quiet of my apartment, I made a promise to myself. I would live my life on my own terms, find my own happiness. I would no longer be the overlooked child, but a woman strong, free, and in control of her destiny. Settling into my new apartment was like starting a fresh chapter in my life. I had my own space, and for the first time, I could use my salary for myself. It was a revelation to realize how far my earnings could stretch when I wasn't giving half of it away to my parents and sister. I could afford good food, stylish clothes, and even indulge in a bit of self-care. One of my first acts of independence was giving myself a complete makeover. I got a stylish haircut, something I had always wanted but never dared to do. I bought clothes that made me feel confident and happy. Every morning, I dressed for work with a sense of pride and excitement. At work, my colleagues noticed the change immediately. "Linda, you look fantastic. What's your secret?" Sarah, one of my closest colleagues, asked me one day. "Just enjoying my life and embracing the change," I replied with a smile, feeling a sense of accomplishment. But the most important thing I did after moving out was to take my grandmother's books with me. Those books were more than just literature, they were a connection to the happiest part of my childhood and a reminder of my grandmother's love. Every evening, after returning from work, I would make myself a cup of tea and curl up with a book from Grandma's collection. It was my way of keeping her memory alive and cherishing the love for reading she had instilled in me. Life in my new apartment was peaceful and fulfilling. I relished in the small joys, like cooking my favorite meals, decorating my space, and losing myself in a good book. The sense of freedom was exhilarating. One afternoon, as I was arranging my books on a new shelf, I came across an old photo of my grandmother tucked inside a novel. Tears welled up in my eyes as I held it. I knew she would have been proud of me for finding my own way. I placed the photo on my nightstand, a nightly reminder of where I came from and the strength I carried within me. My grandmother's enduring love and the lessons she taught me were my guiding light. As days turned into weeks, I found myself evolving. I was no longer the overlooked, burdened daughter and sister. I was Linda, an independent woman who had taken control of her life. I had a job that I enjoyed, a cozy home filled with memories, and the freedom to be myself. Life was no longer about surviving, it was about living, thriving, and finding joy in the little things. My transformation was not just external, it was a deep, internal change that had reshaped my view of the world and myself. Every morning, as I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw a confident, happy woman staring back at me. I was finally at peace, living a life that was truly my own. I had been living in my new apartment for a month when my phone rang one evening. The caller ID flashed my parents' number, a sight that now stirred a mix of emotions. Bracing myself, I answered. "Linda, this is ridiculous. You need to come back home. We can't manage without the money you were giving us." Mom's voice was both pleading and demanding. "I'm sorry you're finding things tough, but I've moved on. Maybe it's time you both looked for jobs," I suggested, trying to keep my voice calm. "How dare you talk to us like that? After all we've done for you?" My dad's voice boomed through the speaker. "I've done my part for years. It's time for you to take responsibility for your own lives," I replied firmly. Their response was a barrage of insults and accusations, but I held my ground. "I'm not responsible for your financial problems," I repeated before ending the call. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. Opening it, I found my sister Lily standing there, her expression one of expectancy. "Linda, I need money for a new gadget. Just transfer it to me like before," she said, as if nothing had changed. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "Lily, I'm not your personal bank anymore. You should try earning your own money." Her reaction was immediate and intense. She began screaming at me, hurling insults and accusations. "You owe us. You're just a selfish, heartless monster." Her screams were so loud that they attracted the attention of my neighbors. Concerned, one of them called the police. Soon, 2 officers were at my door, questioning us about the commotion. After explaining the situation, the officers escorted Lily out, who continued her tirade even as she was led away. I blocked my family's numbers on my phone after that. I was done being their scapegoat and ATM. The next few weeks brought whispers of my family's worsening situation. Mutual acquaintances shared stories of their mounting debts and desperate attempts to find money. My parents, who had never worked a day since I started earning, were now doing odd jobs. Lily, too, found herself in a situation she had never imagined. The sister who once mocked me for my old clothes was now selling her designer outfits and expensive gadgets just to make ends meet. Despite a fleeting sense of pity, I reminded myself of their years of neglect and exploitation. They had chosen this path, and it was their responsibility to navigate it. In my world, life was blossoming. My job was going well, and I was enjoying my newfound freedom and independence. My apartment, once a distant dream, was now my haven of peace, filled with memories of my grandmother and her books. One evening, as I sat in my reading nook, a sense of profound contentment washed over me. The once overlooked and undervalued daughter had transformed into an independent woman. I had broken free from the chains of familial manipulation and emerged stronger. My name is Elaine. I'm a 56-year-old doctor at our local hospital, a profession that has been both my calling and my refuge, especially since becoming a widow 2 decades ago. My life, outside of the hospital, revolves around my only son, Thomas, a 30-year-old who recently told me about his serious relationship with a girl named Clara. He described her in such glowing terms that I was both curious and eager to meet her. So, I invited them over for dinner. The day of their visit, I was a bundle of nerves. I wanted everything to be perfect. I prepared my signature dishes, a golden-baked chicken, sweet milk pudding, and a hearty salad with chicken eggs, amongst others. I hoped these familiar comforts would make Clara feel welcome. When they arrived, Clara was noticeably thin and somewhat pale, but I brushed off my initial concern, attributing it to nerves or perhaps a dietary choice I wasn't yet aware of. I greeted them warmly. "Welcome, Clara. It's so lovely to finally meet you," I said with a smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Elaine," Clara replied politely, though her voice was barely above a whisper. We settled in the living room for a bit before moving to the dining room. I could sense Thomas's excitement as he introduced Clara to my home. However, the atmosphere shifted drastically once we sat down for dinner. Clara's eyes widened in shock when she saw the baked chicken on the table. Her face contorted into a look of disgust as she exclaimed, "I can't believe you're serving this. I'm a hard vegetarian. I don't eat such things." Thomas turned beet red. "Mom, I'm so sorry, I should have told you about Clara's diet," he stammered. Clara cut in sharply, "Thomas, you're such a fool. How could you not mention something so important?" I was taken aback by her harsh words. It was uncomfortable to see Thomas being scolded like that. Quickly trying to remedy the situation, I offered, "Clara, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. Perhaps you'd like to try some of the other dishes? Do they have any animal products? Eggs? Milk?" Clara interrogated, her tone accusatory. "Yes, they do," I replied, feeling a growing sense of unease. She slammed her hand on the table, pushing away the dishes. "I can't even stand the sight of them." Clara stood up abruptly and stormed out of the house, leaving Thomas to mutter an apology before running after her. Several months after the disastrous dinner, Thomas and Clara's wedding day arrived. Despite my reservations about Clara, I put on a brave face for my son's sake. The wedding, as I'd been forewarned, was entirely vegetarian. I had never been to a wedding like this before, and neither had most of our family. As I walked into the venue, I couldn't help but feel out of place. The decorations were beautiful, but the atmosphere was unfamiliar. Clara's friends, also vegetarians, mingled amongst themselves, discussing the virtues of their dietary choices. My sister, Martha, leaned over to me and whispered, "Elaine, have you seen the menu? I can't pronounce half of these dishes." I smiled wryly. "Just go with it, Martha. It's Thomas's day." The ceremony was lovely, but the reception was where things got interesting. The array of vegetarian dishes was certainly exotic. My relatives poked at their food with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. During the meal, my brother-in-law, George, a man never known for his tact, called a waiter over. "Excuse me, son, is there any chance we could get a steak or something? Just a small one?" The waiter, trying to remain polite, responded, "I'm sorry, sir. The menu is strictly vegetarian as per the couple's request." George grunted, "Well, I guess it's salad for dinner then." Despite the unfamiliar food, I tried to focus on the positive. Thomas looked genuinely happy, albeit a bit thinner than I remembered. As the evening progressed, I observed Clara. She was the center of attention among her friends, laughing and seeming in her element. Yet, there was an edge to her laughter, a sharpness that made me uneasy. A few days after the wedding, Thomas came to visit me alone. His appearance startled me. He had lost more weight and looked tired. "Thomas, are you all right? You've lost so much weight," I said, concern evident in my voice. He sighed, looking down at his hands. "Mom, Clara's been, well, she's put me on a strict vegetarian diet too. Says it's non-negotiable." I was taken aback. "But, Thomas, your job is physically demanding. You need a balanced diet." He shrugged helplessly. "I know, Mom, but I want to make her happy. It's been hard adjusting." I watched him leave later, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. Clara's influence over him was more profound than I had feared. My son, once so vibrant and full of life, now seemed a shadow of his former self. After several sleepless nights, filled with worry about Thomas, I decided it was time to take action. I couldn't stand by and watch my son's health deteriorate. With a heavy heart, I picked up the phone to call Clara, Thomas's wife. I hoped that as a doctor, I could express my concerns in a way that would resonate with her. Hello, Clara. It's Elaine, Thomas's mother. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I began, my voice as warm and friendly as I could muster. What do you want, Elaine? Clara's voice was cold, distant. I'm calling about Thomas, I said cautiously. I've noticed he's lost quite a bit of weight and seems very tired lately. I'm worried it could be related to his new diet. Clara let out a sigh, audibly annoyed. Look, Elaine, Thomas is perfectly fine. He's just adapting to a healthier way of eating. You're overreacting. I understand your perspective, Clara, but as a doctor, I see signs of nutritional deficiencies in Thomas. He works a physically demanding job, and a strict vegetarian diet without proper planning can lead to health issues. I explained, trying to keep the conversation civil and factual. Elaine, I don't need a lecture on nutrition from you. We've done our research. Thomas is on a balanced vegetarian diet, and that's that. You're not a dietitian, Clara retorted sharply. But Clara, there are certain nutrients that are hard to get from a vegetarian diet alone, especially for someone with Thomas's lifestyle. Perhaps we could work together to find a diet that meets his nutritional needs and aligns with your dietary preferences? I suggested, hoping for a compromise. Clara's voice rose in frustration. I'm not interested in your help, Elaine. Thomas is my husband, and we make our decisions together. You need to respect that and stay out of it. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Clara's unwillingness to even consider my concerns was alarming. Later that day, my sister, Karen, came over. I shared the distressing phone call with her. Karen, I don't know what to do. Clara just shut me down. She wouldn't even listen to my concerns about Thomas. I shared, my hands trembling slightly. Karen, always a source of practical advice, looked thoughtful. Elaine, it's a tough situation. But maybe Thomas needs to come to this realization on his own. Clara obviously has a strong influence on him. I nodded, knowing she was right, yet feeling uneasy. I just can't sit back and watch Thomas suffer. He's always been a bit too accommodating, and now it's affecting his health. Karen reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I know, Elaine. But sometimes stepping back is the only way they learn. Maybe when Thomas sees the toll it's taking on him, he'll make a change. A few days after my futile conversation with Clara, Thomas came to visit me unexpectedly. It was a cold, gray afternoon, the kind that made you want to stay indoors. When I opened the door, the sight of him took my breath away. He looked nothing like the son I knew. His face was drawn and pale, his eyes lacking their usual spark. But it was the scratches on his face that alarmed me the most. Thomas, what happened to you? I exclaimed, ushering him inside. He avoided my gaze, a sign that he was uncomfortable. It's nothing, Mom, just a little argument with Clara. I led him to the living room, my mind racing with worry. Argument? Thomas, she scratched your face. This is serious. He finally looked at me, his eyes weary. I know, Mom. I don't know what to do anymore. I fetched my first aid kit and began treating his scratches gently. Tell me what happened, Thomas. You know you can talk to me. He sighed, a deep, troubled sigh. I went out for a quick bite. I just wanted to eat something more high-calorie and tasty, you know? I went to this cafe and ordered a burger. Clara saw me through the window. She stormed in and made a huge scene. I couldn't hide my shock. A scene? Over a burger? Thomas nodded, looking down at his hands. Yeah, she was screaming about me betraying our lifestyle, our values. She said I was poisoning myself. Then she scratched my face and told me to leave the house. I finished bandaging his face, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Thomas, this isn't healthy. You can't live like this. Being forced to change your diet and then being attacked for eating a burger? It's not right. He leaned back on the sofa, closing his eyes. I know, Mom. But I love her. I thought I could make this work. I sat beside him, my heart aching for my son. Love shouldn't be this hard, Thomas. It shouldn't hurt like this. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Thomas spoke up. I think I'll stay here tonight, if that's okay. I just need some time to think. Of course, you can stay as long as you need, I replied, trying to offer him a comforting smile. That evening, as I cooked dinner, I kept glancing at Thomas, who was sitting at the kitchen table, lost in thought. I prepared a simple, hearty meal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables. The kind of food I knew he loved. As we ate, I tried to lighten the mood. Remember when you were a kid, and you wouldn't eat anything but chicken nuggets for a week? Thomas managed a small smile. Yeah, I was a picky eater. But I always loved your cooking, Mom. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. You're always welcome here, Thomas. You're my son, and I just want you to be happy and healthy. He squeezed back, a glimmer of the old Thomas in his eyes. Thanks, Mom. I really needed this. The next couple of weeks passed in a blur of worry and sleepless nights. Then, one ordinary Thursday, my world was rocked by a phone call that every parent dreads. It was the hospital. Mrs. Parker, your son Thomas was brought in this morning. He's been in an accident, the voice on the other end said, calm yet impersonal. My heart skipped a beat. Is he all right? What happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He's stable now, but he lost consciousness at the wheel. He's lucky, the injuries aren't serious. You can come and see him, the caller replied. I hurried to the hospital, my mind racing with 1,000 fears. When I arrived, I saw Thomas lying in a hospital bed, looking even more pale and thin than before. Thomas, oh my God, are you all right? I gasped, rushing to his side. He managed a weak smile. I'm okay, Mom. Just a bit shaken up. A doctor I knew, Dr. Simmons, came into the room. Elaine, we've given him a thorough checkup. Physically, he's fine, just a few bruises. But his blood tests show signs of malnourishment. It seems he fainted due to low blood sugar. I turned to Thomas, my worry turning into anger. Malnourishment? Thomas, is this because of your diet? Thomas avoided my gaze, nodding slightly. I guess I haven't been eating properly. Clara's been so strict about the diet. I turned to Dr. Simmons. Can we make sure he gets a proper meal here? Something substantial? Of course, Elaine. We'll take care of him, Dr. Simmons assured me. I sat by Thomas's bed, holding his hand. Thomas, this has to stop. You could have been killed. All because of this diet. Thomas sighed, a look of resignation on his face. I know, Mom. I just wanted to make Clara happy. But not at the cost of your health, Thomas. This isn't just about food, it's about control. She can't dictate what you eat to this extent, I said, my voice firm but filled with concern. He looked away, his eyes filling with tears. I love her, Mom. I thought love was about compromises. Compromises, yes. But not like this. Not when it puts you in danger, I replied, squeezing his hand. We sat in silence for a while, the beeping of the heart monitor the only sound in the room. Thomas eventually drifted off to sleep, exhausted from the ordeal. I tried to call Clara, but she didn't answer the phone. Maybe she was afraid of my reaction to what had happened, or maybe she didn't care. After Thomas was discharged from the hospital, I insisted he stay with me for a while. Clara didn't mind. At least she didn't reply to my message. Thomas needed proper care, and I wanted to make sure he got back on his feet, both physically and emotionally. The first evening at my house, I prepared a hearty meal. As I set the table, I could see Thomas eyeing the food with a mix of hunger and hesitation. "Mom, this looks amazing, but I don't know if I should." "Clara might not like it," Thomas said, a troubled look crossing his face. "Thomas, right now, you need to focus on your health. Clara isn't here, and you need to eat," I responded firmly, serving him a generous portion of roasted chicken and vegetables. He reluctantly began to eat, and with each bite, I saw a bit of color return to his cheeks. "This is really good, Mom. I didn't realize how much I missed your cooking." I sat across from him, watching him eat. "Thomas, you've always been healthy. It's painful to see you like this. Your relationship with Clara, it's not just about food. It's about control and your well-being." Thomas set his fork down, his expression pained. "I know, Mom. I just don't know what to do. I love her, but everything is so complicated now. Love shouldn't make you compromise your health or who you are. You've always been considerate and caring, but you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm," I said, hoping my words would resonate with him. Over the next few days, I took care of Thomas, ensuring he ate well and rested. We talked a lot, about everything and nothing. I avoided pressing him about Clara, hoping he would come to his own conclusions. One evening, as we were sitting in the living room, Thomas spoke up. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I've been trying too hard to please Clara, losing myself in the process." I nodded. "It's important to find a balance, Thomas. In a relationship, both people should feel valued and respected." He looked at me, a newfound determination in his eyes. "I'm going to talk to Clara. I need to be honest about how I feel, about the diet, and everything else." I reached over, squeezing his hand. "Whatever you decide, Thomas, I'm here for you. Just remember, your health and happiness are what's most important." As Thomas went to bed that night, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. He was at a crossroads, and the next steps he took would shape his future. All I could do was support him and hope that he found the strength to make the right decisions for himself. The situation escalated quickly when Clara, Thomas's wife, burst into my house during lunch. Thomas was just starting to look a bit better after days of proper nutrition at my place. "Thomas, what are you doing?" Clara shrieked as she saw him eating the chicken broth I'd made. Thomas looked up, startled. "Clara, I'm just..." "You're betraying our lifestyle again. I can't believe this." Clara was livid, her eyes blazing with anger. Before I could intervene, she knocked the bowl of broth from Thomas's hands, sending it crashing to the floor. I stood up, my own anger rising at her irrational behavior. "Clara, that's enough. You're in my house, and I won't tolerate this behavior," I said firmly. "You're poisoning him, Elaine, with your meat and your old-fashioned ideas," Clara shouted, turning her wrath towards me. Thomas tried to calm her down. "Clara, please, let's just talk about this." Ignoring him, Clara pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. I won't let you harm him any further." Thomas and I exchanged a look of disbelief as Clara dialed. Within minutes, a police car pulled up outside, and 2 officers came to the door. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of the officers asked, looking between Clara, Thomas, and me. Clara immediately began, pointing a finger at me. "She's been forcing my husband to eat meat. She's trying to poison him against his will." The officer turned to me, his expression one of mild confusion and concern. "Ma'am, is this true?" I shook my head. "No, officer. I'm Thomas's mother, and I've been taking care of him. He's been unwell due to malnutrition. I'm a doctor, and I was just trying to help him recover." Thomas spoke up, his voice weak but steady. "It's true, officers. I'd been staying with my mom for a few days to get my health back. I went to my kitchen counter and picked up a hospital report. Here's the report from when Thomas was admitted after fainting due to low blood sugar. His diet was insufficient, and that's what I've been trying to address. The officers took the report, glancing over it. Clara's face turned pale as the reality of the situation started to dawn on her. "Ma'am, it looks like Mrs. Parker has been acting in her son's best interest," the officer said to Clara. "If there's no actual harm or criminal activity here, we can't take any action." Clara was speechless, her earlier fury deflated. The officers advised her to resolve the matter peacefully and left. Thomas looked exhausted by the whole ordeal. "Clara, I think you should go. We need to talk, but not now. Not like this." Clara, still in shock, quietly left the house without another word. I watched her go, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The whole situation had spiraled out of control, and I worried about what this meant for Thomas's future with Clara. In the weeks that followed the police intervention, Thomas stayed with me, slowly regaining his strength and clarity of mind. We had many long conversations about his marriage and future. One evening, as we sat in the living room, a sense of resolve seemed to settle over him. "Mom, I've made a decision," Thomas said, his voice more assertive than I'd heard in a long time. I looked at him, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief. "What have you decided, Thomas?" "I can't go on like this with Clara. Our marriage, it's not healthy. I'm going to file for a divorce," he declared, though I could see the pain in his eyes. I reached out, taking his hand. "I know this must be hard for you, but I think you're making the right choice. You deserve to be happy and healthy, Thomas." He nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "I know. I just wish it didn't have to come to this." The next few days were a whirlwind as Thomas set the divorce process in motion. It was a tough time, but he handled it with a strength that made me proud. When the day came for him to move back into his own place, I helped him pack his things. As he was about to leave, he turned to me. "Mom, I can't thank you enough. You've been my rock through all of this." I hugged him tightly. "You're my son. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." A couple of weeks after Thomas moved out, I received a call from him. He sounded different, more like his old self. "Mom, I wanted to tell you that the divorce has been finalized. And I decided to take legal action against Clara for her role in the accident." I was surprised. "That's a big step, Thomas. Are you sure about this?" "Yes, I am. It's not just about me. It's about setting things right. And, you know, the court ruled in my favor. Clara has to pay me compensation," he explained. I could hear the confidence in his voice. "I'm proud of you, Thomas. You're standing up for yourself." There was a pause before he spoke again. "I've also started seeing a counselor. I think it's helping me understand a lot about myself and my relationships." Hearing this brought a sense of peace to my heart. "That's wonderful, Thomas. Taking care of your mental health is just as important." As we ended the call, I felt a wave of emotions. The past months had been a roller coaster, but through it all, Thomas had found his way back to himself. He had faced his challenges head-on and emerged stronger. The future was uncertain, but I knew that whatever it held, Thomas was now better equipped to face it. And as for me, I would continue to be there for him, his steadfast support, as I had always been.